The silence was the loudest sound I have ever heard. It was my turn to speak in a meeting, and while my colleagues' ideas had flowed seamlessly into my understanding, my own thoughts hit a solid wall between my brain and my tongue.
That moment of mute panic, where knowledge and ability violently divorced, is a feeling I will never forget. If you have ever been held hostage by your own voice, if the words you understand so perfectly remain trapped inside when you need them most, then you have come to the right place. Your journey out of that silence starts now.
Welcome, everyone, to a conversation that could change everything. I'm Bob, and I'll be your companion, sharing the hard-earned lessons from my own path to finding my voice.
And I'm Carol, here to provide the actionable, step-by-step blueprint that will translate your passive knowledge into active, powerful speech. Today, we are confronting a universal struggle head-on: the immense gap between comprehending English and commanding it in conversation.
This is not a sign of failure. It is the most common checkpoint on the road to fluency. The anatomy of this frustration is complex, but we will dissect it together.
For me, it manifested in 1,000 small surrenders. Choosing to stay quiet in a group discussion rather than risk a flawed sentence. Rehearsing a simple question to a stranger in my head until the moment passed and I could avoid asking it altogether.
That cycle of understanding and muteness is exhausting. It chips away at your confidence and makes you question the very knowledge you have worked so hard to build. But this barrier is not made of steel. It is made of misconceptions and fear, and we have the tools to dismantle it.
Let's begin by diagnosing the core reasons this listening-speaking chasm exists. The most fundamental issue is an environment rich in input but barren in output. We swim in an ocean of English media. We listen, we read, we absorb. But this is a one-way street. Your brain is a sophisticated processor of information, but without a consistent command to produce, it treats speaking as an optional, high-risk feature.
This lack of practice is then magnified exponentially by a psychological blockade, the terror of error.
This fear is a cunning illusion.
It makes you believe that every listener is a harsh critic waiting for you to stumble, when in reality, most people are simply focused on the meaning of your words, not their perfect construction.
I spent years believing my accent was a flaw to be hidden, until I realized it was simply a part of my story, a signature of my journey. The fear of mistakes is a cage whose door is unlocked from the inside.
Another hidden villain in this story, one that plagued me for years, is the habit of mental translation. I used to believe that to speak correctly, I needed to construct the perfect sentence in my native language first, then meticulously translate it word for word into English before daring to utter a sound.
That constant internal translation is utterly exhausting, Bob. It's like trying to run a marathon while solving complex math problems in your head simultaneously. It slows down your speech to a crawl and prevents the kind of spontaneous, fluid conversation that defines true fluency. Your brain becomes a busy interpreter, not a natural speaker.
Exactly, and it creates this frustrating delay. By the time I had finished translating my thought, the conversation had already moved on, leaving me with a perfectly formed sentence that was now completely irrelevant. I was always one step behind, trapped in a time lag of my own making.
This highlights a critical point. Fluency isn't just about vocabulary and grammar. It's about speed. It's about the ability to think quickly in English. If your brain isn't trained to process and produce the language at a conversational pace, it's like trying to merge onto a high-speed freeway on a bicycle.
The thinking speed barrier is real. I remember trying to keep up with native speakers and feeling like my mind was stuck in molasses. Their words flowed like a river, while mine felt like individual droplets needing to be painstakingly collected. It wasn't that I didn't know the words, it was that my brain hadn't yet built the neural pathways to access them instantly.
And this brings us back to the most fundamental solution: practice. But not just any practice. It has to be the right kind of practice. The more you actively speak, the more you force your brain to bypass that translation stage and start thinking directly in English. You're essentially building a dedicated mental highway for the language.
It's like working out a muscle, but for your mind. When you first start lifting weights, your movements are slow and uncoordinated. But with consistent repetition, your muscles learn the motion and it becomes smooth and automatic. Speaking English is the same. Your brain needs those repetitions to develop the cognitive muscle memory for fluent speech.
That's a perfect analogy, Bob. Every time you speak without translating, you are strengthening those neural connections. You are teaching your brain that it can operate in English directly. This is why immersion is so powerful. It forces this direct pathway because you don't have the luxury of constant translation.
So, how do we start building this mental agility? For me, it began with changing my internal monologue. I started consciously trying to think in English for small, simple tasks. While making coffee, I'd think, I am pouring the water into the machine, instead of thinking it in my native language first.
That is a brilliant and accessible first step. It's a zero risk environment. No one is listening, no one is judging. You're simply shifting the language of your thoughts. This practice alone begins to rewire your brain for direct access, cutting out the middleman of your native tongue.
It felt silly at first, I won't lie, but soon those simple thoughts became more complex. I'd start mentally rehearsing conversations I might have later in the day, all in English. This pre-programming made the actual conversations feel less daunting and much smoother.
This proactive mental practice is a game changer. It prepares your brain for real world interaction. Another method is to use fillers and connectors naturally. Instead of freezing during the translation process, learn to use phrases like, well, let me think, or that's an interesting point. This gives your brain a precious extra second to access the English directly without reverting to translation.
Those little phrases are like life rafts in a conversation. They keep you afloat and engaged while you assemble your thoughts. They signal to the other person that you're still participating, which boosts your confidence immensely. You're no longer silent, you're thinking aloud in English.
And let's not forget the role of vocabulary. When you learn a new word, don't just memorize its translation. Learn it in context. See it in a sentence. Hear it in a podcast. Try to use it in a thought or a sentence immediately. This helps anchor the word directly in your English network, not your translation network.
So, to recap, we're fighting the translation habit and building thinking speed by practicing direct thought, using conversational fillers, and learning vocabulary in context. It's about making English the default language for your internal world, not just for external consumption.
Now, let's tackle the first and most formidable wall, breaking the silence. Bob, how do we start dismantling this fear of speaking English? It's a mountain that seems so difficult to climb.
The very first step, Carol, is the one we often resist the most: acknowledgement. We have to look that fear directly in the eye and accept that it's there. It's okay to feel scared. It's a normal human reaction to putting yourself in a vulnerable position. The goal isn't to eliminate the fear instantly, it's to stop letting it make the decisions for you.
That's a powerful distinction. It's not about being fearless, it's about being brave. For me, it helped to personify the fear. I named it my critical critic. I would acknowledge its presence. Okay, I hear you. You're worried I'll sound foolish. And then I would make a conscious choice to speak anyway. I started to separate my identity from the critical voice in my head.
I love that. It makes the fear an external force you can manage, not a part of who you are. And once you've acknowledged it, you start with small, almost microscopic steps. You don't run a marathon on your first day of training. For speaking, that first step could be simply greeting your neighbor in English instead of your native language.
Absolutely. These small, low-stakes interactions are the training weights for your confidence. Another incredibly effective yet underrated method is mirror practice. I know it can feel silly at first, talking to your own reflection.
It does feel silly. I remember feeling so self-conscious. But what I discovered is that it serves two crucial purposes.
First, it gets you used to the physical act of forming English words and hearing your own voice speak them without any external pressure. Second, it allows you to see your own facial expressions and body language. You start to become familiar with yourself as an English speaker.
That self-familiarity is everything. It reduces the shock of hearing your voice in a real conversation. And let's not forget the power of recording yourself. This was a game changer for me. I would record short voice memos on my phone, just talking about my day for 1 minute.
That sounds terrifying. Listening to your own voice can be cringeworthy at first.
It is. The first time I played it back, I cringed at every perceived mistake and every hint of my accent. But I made myself do it daily. And after a week, something shifted. I started to notice small improvements, a smoother flow here, a correctly pronounced word there. The recording became a tool for measurement, not judgment. It was proof that I was improving, even when it didn't feel like it.
So it turns the focus from how you feel in the moment to the concrete evidence of your progress. That's a powerful mental shift. And alongside these techniques, we must talk about goal setting, but not huge, overwhelming goals. We're talking about tiny, achievable daily missions.
Precisely. The goal is not become fluent. The goal for today is learn 3 new words related to my hobby and use them in a sentence. Or start a conversation with the barista by asking how their day is going. These micro victories are the bricks that build the foundation of unshakable confidence.
Each completed small goal is a message to your brain, I can do this. It builds a positive feedback loop. And this leads us to the most important mindset shift of all, embracing mistakes. We have to stop seeing them as failures.
This is the cornerstone. Every mistake is a data point, a signpost showing you exactly what you need to work on. I began to reframe them in my mind. Instead of thinking, I made a mistake, I started thinking, I just discovered a very specific area for my next practice session. It turned my errors into my teachers.
So every conversation you start, even if it ends with a grammatical mix-up or a forgotten word, is not a failure. It's a victory.
Without a doubt, you showed up, you engaged, you practice. That is a complete success. Remember, folks, start small, use your mirror and your recorder as allies, set tiny goals, and welcome every mistake as a priceless piece of your learning puzzle. This is how you break the silence.
So Carol, let's get into the nuts and bolts. How can our listeners practice speaking daily, even when they're completely alone? It's one of the biggest challenges, finding opportunities to speak when there's no one around to listen.
It's a fantastic question, Bob. And the good news is that there are countless ways to integrate active speaking into your solitary daily routine. One of the most effective and transformative methods I ever adopted was self-narration. I started describing my own actions out loud in English as if I were the host of a documentary about my own life.
A documentary about your own life? I have to try that. So, what would that actually sound like?
It would sound something like, and here we observe Carol meticulously preparing her morning coffee, a crucial ritual upon which her entire productivity for the day seems to depend. She is now carefully measuring the coffee grounds, ensuring the perfect ratio for optimal flavor. It feels theatrical at first, but it forces you to use vocabulary related to your immediate environment and actions, which is incredibly practical.
That's actually a brilliant way to practice the present continuous tense in everyday vocabulary without any pressure. It connects the language directly to your physical reality. Another powerful tool that I relied on heavily was technology. There are numerous applications now that are designed specifically to listen to you speak and provide immediate feedback on your pronunciation.
These apps can't replace the nuance of human interaction, of course, but they serve as an invaluable supplement. They are a judgment-free practice partner available 24/7. You can mispronounce a word a dozen times, and the app will patiently correct you each time without a hint of impatience. This kind of repetitive, focused practice is essential for muscle memory.
Exactly. It's like having a personal pronunciation coach in your pocket. And speaking of reading, let's not overlook the classic technique of reading aloud. This practice is a 2-for-1 benefit. It significantly improves your pronunciation, while simultaneously enhancing your fluency and rhythm.
The key with reading aloud is material selection. Don't start with a dense academic textbook. Choose something you genuinely enjoy, a thrilling novel, a fascinating blog about your hobby, or even the captions on a social media post. The goal is to make the practice engaging so that it doesn't feel like a chore. The pleasure of the content helps you forget you're even practicing.
What about for those who might feel too self-conscious to narrate or read to an empty room? Any less intimidating ideas?
Absolutely. This is where your pets or even your plant houses become your best audience. Speaking to a pet is wonderfully low pressure. They are the most non-judgmental listeners on the planet. You can tell your dog about your day, describe the toy you're holding, or explain the plot of a movie you just saw. The simple act of forming the sentences and speaking them aloud is what matters.
So the goal is to create a safe space for your voice to exist in English, even if your only audience has four legs or photosynthesizes. And let's circle back to that mirror technique we mentioned earlier. This isn't just about building confidence for the sake of it. It's about connecting the visual of your mouth movements with the sounds you're producing.
Precisely. You can see if you're forming the th sound correctly. Watch the shape of your lips for a W versus a V, and practice maintaining eye contact with your reflection, which translates directly to better eye contact in real conversations. It's a full sensory practice session.
Integrating these methods turns your daily life into a continuous, low-stakes speaking lab. The pressure evaporates because you're not performing for anyone. You're simply allowing your English voice to exist, to grow stronger and more confident with every word you utter, even if you're the only one who hears it.
Now, let's explore another incredibly powerful technique, one that truly bridged the gap between understanding and speaking for me, the art of mimicking masters. Bob, this goes far beyond simple repetition.
Mimicking masters? That sounds intriguing. Are we talking about trying to talk like a famous actor or a renowned public speaker?
Exactly that. It's about actively studying and imitating individuals whose spoken English you admire. This isn't about erasing your own identity or accent. It's about dissecting and absorbing the very elements that make their speech clear, compelling, and fluent. We are learning from the best craftsmen to improve our own craft.
So it's a focused study of rhythm and flow, not just copying for fun.
Precisely. Native speakers have a certain musicality, a rhythm, intonation, and stress pattern that textbooks often fail to capture. By mimicking, you train your ear to hear these subtleties and your voice to reproduce them. It's the difference between playing the correct notes on a piano and playing them with feeling and dynamics.
How does someone practically start this kind of practice? It seems a bit abstract.
A fantastic starting point is with short, clear video or audio clips. Find a speaker you admire, a journalist, a TED Talk presenter, or even a calm and articulate character from a film. Listen to a single sentence, not just for the words, but for the melody. Where does their voice rise and fall? Which words do they emphasize? Then you try to replicate it exactly. This technique is called shadowing.
Shadowing. So you're like an echo, following immediately behind them.
Yes, you try to speak simultaneously with them, matching their pace, their tone, even their pauses. It's challenging at first, but it forces your brain and your speech apparatus to operate at a native speed. You begin to internalize the natural phrasing and the linking of words, which is where fluency truly lives.
This sounds like it could also be a powerful tool for learning casual language, the kind you don't find in formal textbooks. The slang, the common idioms, the cultural references.
Without a doubt. By choosing different types of masters to mimic, a comedian for informal conversation, a documentary narrator for descriptive language, a news anchor for clear diction, you build a versatile speaking ability. You learn the appropriate language for different contexts. You start to understand how humor is delivered, how stories are built, and how arguments are presented in English.
And technology is a great ally here too, right? You can use video platforms to slow down the speech without distorting the pitch, allowing you to really hear each sound and rhythm clearly.
Absolutely. That slowdown function is a secret weapon. It allows you to deconstruct the magic. You can hear how the T in water is pronounced, how the words going to become gonna in natural speech. You are reverse engineering fluency. And don't forget about your own recording device. Record yourself mimicking the master and then listen back to both recordings. Compare them. The differences will be your most valuable teacher.
So it's a process of active listening, detailed imitation, and objective self-analysis. This isn't passive consumption, it's an intensive workshop you conduct for yourself.
It is the most active form of listening there is. You are not just a consumer of the language, you are an apprentice. And with consistent practice, the rhythms and patterns you practice consciously will start to emerge unconsciously in your own spontaneous conversations. The master's voice becomes a guide that lives in your ear, shaping your own.
And the third element, exaggeration, that sounds counterintuitive.
It is the secret weapon. When you practice, I want you to exaggerate the speaker's intonation and rhythm. If their voice goes up a little, make yours go up a lot. If they stress a word, you stress it even more heavily. By overcorrecting and amplifying the features of native speech, you stretch your vocal range and flexibility. It feels silly, but it breaks you out of your monotonous speaking habits and makes the correct, more subtle intonation feel natural and easy later on.
So you're essentially training your vocal muscles to explore a wider range of expression so that the required range for natural speech sits comfortably in the middle. That's brilliant.
Precisely. And finally, all this practice leads to stabilization. This is where the new pronunciation and rhythm become your new normal. You're no longer thinking about it, it just comes out. You'll find these new patterns and phrases starting to pop up in your everyday conversations without any conscious effort. That is the moment of true integration, where the master's skill becomes your own.
So it's a cycle. Listen with precision, imitate with focus, exaggerate to learn, and then stabilize through repetition. This turns abstract advice into a tangible daily practice routine.
It does. And remember, this isn't about losing yourself. It's about adding new tools to your toolbox. You are expanding your expressive capabilities in English, one meticulously practiced phrase at a time. Now, let's pivot to a strategy that fundamentally changed my relationship with English. The conscious shift from passive reception to active creation. Bob, this is about turning every exposure to the language into an opportunity for output.
That sounds powerful, Carol. We live in a world saturated with English content, but you're saying we're not leveraging it fully. We're consumers when we need to be creators.
Exactly. Passive reception is when you absorb language without any interactive engagement. It's watching a movie for the plot, listening to a song for the melody, or reading an article just for the information. Your brain is in a receptive but largely inactive state regarding language production.
So active learning is the opposite. It's engaging with the content in a way that forces you to use the language yourself.
Yes, it's adding a layer of cognitive effort that transforms consumption into practice. Let's start with something simple, reflection. After you watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast, don't just move on to the next one. Pause. Ask yourself questions in English and answer them out loud. What was the main point the presenter made? Do I agree with their argument? How would I summarize this in 3 sentences?
So you're forcing your brain to retrieve vocabulary and form sentences about the content you just consumed. You're having a conversation with yourself about it. That seems like a zero-cost way to generate speaking practice.
It is. Another powerful method is repetition and shadowing, which we touched on, but let's apply it directly to passive activities. While watching a show, pause after a character delivers a clear line. Repeat it immediately, trying to capture their exact intonation. This is active learning. You are moving from hearing to doing in seconds.
And what about reading? Many of our listeners read in English, but that's often a passive activity too.
A fantastic way to activate reading is through summary. After finishing a chapter of a book or a long online article, close it. Now, speak a 1-minute summary out loud. This is incredibly challenging. It forces you to recall key information, sequence events logically, and express it all in your own words. It builds mental agility.
That's a brilliant technique. It combines reading comprehension, memory recall, and spoken fluency all in one exercise. And it has real-world applications like telling a friend about a movie you saw or a book you read.
Precisely. Furthermore, we can activate vocabulary learning. Instead of just memorizing a list of words, commit to using each new word in a spoken sentence that day. Better yet, use it in a conversation with a language partner or even just in your self-narration. This moves the word from your passive vocabulary, words you recognize, to your active vocabulary, words you can use.
So the core principle is to add an output task to every input activity. Listen, then summarize. Read, then discuss. Learn a word, then use it in speech. This bridges the gap between understanding and using.
That's the essence of it. You are building neural pathways for production every time you do this. It requires more effort than passive consumption, but the reward is a dramatic acceleration in your speaking ability. You're not just filling your tank, you're learning to drive.
Carol, let's make this transition from passive to active even more concrete. For someone feeling overwhelmed, what is one simple, immediate change they can make to their daily routine to start this process today?
The most impactful change is also the simplest. Start talking back to your content. When you're listening to a podcast like this one or watching a tutorial, hit the pause button, respond to the speaker's questions or comments out loud. If I say, "What do you think about this strategy?" you pause and actually answer me in full sentences as if you were a guest on the show.
That's a powerful shift. Instead of being a silent audience member, you're turning yourself into an active participant. You're creating a dialogue where one doesn't exist. It transforms a one-way stream of information into a two-way conversation.
Exactly. Another practical method is to use the technology you already have. Use your phone's speech-to-text feature to dictate a message or a short email in English. This forces you to speak clearly and complete your thoughts because the technology won't understand fragmented phrases. You immediately see if your pronunciation was clear enough to be accurately transcribed.
That's a brilliant real-world test. If the text comes out as gibberish, you know you need to work on enunciating those specific words more clearly. It's instant, unbiased feedback.
And for our readers, this applies to social media. Instead of just scrolling through posts in English, take 30 seconds to leave a spoken comment using voice dictation. Or even better, record a short video comment. You're engaging with the content, practicing forming an opinion, and putting your spoken English out into the world in a low-stakes way.
So we're looking for every possible opportunity to interrupt our passivity with a moment of active production. It's about inserting your voice into the English-speaking world however you can.
Precisely. Another key is to join an online club or forum centered on a hobby you love, but where the primary language is English. This moves you from consuming content about your hobby to actively discussing it. You are motivated by your interests, and the language becomes the tool for connection, not the end goal itself. This is how you achieve flow.
That reframes the entire challenge. The goal isn't to practice English. The goal is to discuss photography or chess or science fiction, and English is the medium. The practice becomes a natural byproduct of pursuing your passion.
And finally, a method I used expensively, reactive writing. Watch a short, compelling video clip without sound. Then write down what you think the people are saying. Afterwards, speak your dialogue out loud. Then watch the clip with sound to compare. This activates your predictive skills, your writing, and your speaking, all centered on real-world context.
So the overarching strategy is to never just consume. Always add a layer of interaction. Pause, respond, dictate, comment, discuss, and create. You are building a habit of engagement that makes active speaking your default mode.
That's the foundation. It's about building a system where your environment constantly prompts you to speak, moving you steadily from being a spectator in the world of English to being an active participant in it. Now, let's tackle a moment that makes every heartbeat a little bit faster, initiating a conversation. Bob, this is often the biggest hurdle, that first step into the unknown. How do we break the ice without breaking our confidence?
It truly is the moment of truth, Carol. The fear of that initial approach can be paralyzing, but the key is to have a few simple, versatile conversation starters ready in your toolkit. They are like keys that can unlock a dialogue. One of the most reliable and universally engaging starters is to ask for a local recommendation.
That's an excellent one. Food is a universal language. Asking, "Excuse me, could you recommend a good coffee shop around here?" is a low-pressure question that almost everyone is happy to answer. It's practical, it's friendly, and it immediately establishes a common ground.
Exactly. It's not a personal question, so it feels safe for both parties. Another fantastic icebreaker is to ask for an opinion on popular culture. Have you seen any good movies lately? Or, I'm looking for a new series to watch. Do you have any favorites? This taps into a shared experience and gives the other person a chance to talk about something they enjoy.
And that leads beautifully into discussing hobbies. Asking someone, "What do you like to do in your free time?" is an open-ended invitation that can reveal shared passions. If you discover you both enjoy hiking or painting or coding, the conversation suddenly has a natural and enthusiastic flow. The language becomes a vehicle for connection.
For those in a more social or travel context, asking about travel experiences is a gold mine. Have you traveled anywhere interesting recently? People love to share their adventures. This question can lead to stories about culture, food, and landscapes, providing a rich and varied vocabulary practice for you.
And for those who feel a bit shy, remember the power of a genuine compliment. It can be as simple as, "I really like your bag. Where did you get it?" A compliment immediately creates a positive atmosphere. It shows you're observant and friendly, making the other person more inclined to engage in a chat.
The common thread with all these starters is that they are open-ended. They require more than a simple yes or no answer. You're asking what, where, or how questions that encourage a story or an explanation. This is crucial because it gives you more language to listen to and respond to, creating a longer, more natural practice session.
Precisely. Contrast, "Did you have a good weekend?" with "What did you do for your weekend?" The first can be answered with one word. The second invites a narrative. Your goal is to invite that narrative. And remember, the more you use these starters, the more automatic they become. The initial anxiety will diminish with each successful attempt.
So, to our listeners, your mission is to choose one of these starters this week. Asking for a recommendation, discussing a show, exploring a hobby, sharing a travel memory, or giving a compliment. And use it just once. That single victory is a monumental step toward conversational fluency. Carol, let's say our listener has successfully started a conversation using one of these brilliant starters. The ice is broken, but now a new anxiety creeps in. How do you keep the conversation going? How do you prevent it from stalling after the initial exchange? This is where the real art of dialogue begins.
This is the critical follow-up phase, Bob, and it's all about active listening and building on the threads the other person provides. The biggest mistake we make is thinking about what we're going to say next instead of truly listening to what is being said now.
Your only job after asking the initial question is to listen for hooks, little pieces of information you can grab onto to ask a deeper, more specific question.
So it's like being a detective in the conversation. If you ask about a movie recommendation and they say, I just saw a great sci-fi film, that's your hook. Don't just say cool and move on. Grab that hook. Ask, what was it about the sci-fi genre that you particularly enjoyed in that film? Or are you a longtime sci-fi fan?
Exactly. You are mining their response for gold. This does two things. It shows the person you are genuinely interested in what they have to say, which is flattering and builds rapport, and it gives you a continuous stream of material to work with. The conversation becomes a collaborative exploration rather than a question and answer interrogation.
I love that distinction, collaboration versus interrogation. It takes the pressure off you to be interesting and shifts it to a shared goal of having an interesting chat. Another powerful technique is to relate their answer back to your own experience, but briefly, before returning the focus to them.
That's a key point. For example, if they talk about their love for hiking, you could say, "That's wonderful. I've always been curious about hiking. What was one of your most memorable trails?" You've shared a tiny piece of yourself, your curiosity, which makes you more relatable, but you immediately hand the conversation back to them with another open ended question.
And what about those inevitable moments when your mind goes blank, when you can't find a hook? Is there a safety net?
Absolutely. This is where you have a few universal, flexible questions in your back pocket. Questions like, what was that experience like for you? Or how did you get started with that? Or what do you find most challenging about that? These questions can be applied to almost any topic: work, hobbies, travel, and they always lead to deeper, more personal stories.
So the strategy is a combination. Listen intently for specific hooks, use brief personal connections to build rapport, and have universal, depth-seeking questions ready as a conversational safety net. This transforms a simple starter into a flowing, meaningful dialogue.
Precisely. It's about building a language loop where you are constantly receiving, processing, and responding. Each response becomes a new invitation for the other person to share more. This is how you build not just your fluency, but genuine connections through English.
Now we arrive at what I believe is the very heart of the matter, the engine that drives everything we've discussed: confidence. Carol, why is confidence not just a nice to have feeling, but an absolutely essential component for speaking English fluently?
Confidence is the foundation upon which all other skills are built, Bob. Without it, knowledge remains locked inside. Think of it this way: your vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation are the tools in your toolbox. Confidence is the hand that reaches in, selects the right tool, and uses it without hesitation. Without that confident hand, the most sophisticated tools remain unused.
So it's a practical necessity, not just a psychological state. When we feel confident, we're more likely to take the risks required to speak. We're less likely to second guess every word, which is what creates those awkward pauses and that halting speech.
Exactly. Confidence creates fluency. It allows you to bypass the internal critic and access the language you already know. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you believe you can communicate effectively, you become more relaxed, your mind becomes clearer, and the words flow more naturally. This successful communication then reinforces your confidence, creating a powerful positive feedback loop.
But how does someone actually build this from the ground up, especially if they're starting from a place of self-doubt?
It begins with a fundamental mindset shift. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. You are on your own journey. The first step is to set microscopic, achievable goals that have nothing to do with perfection. The goal is not have a perfect 30-minute conversation. The goal is say hello to the shopkeeper in English today, or use one new word I learned in a sentence.
I love that. These tiny victories are the bricks that build the mansion of confidence.
Each one is a piece of evidence you can present to yourself, proof that you are capable and making progress. It's about collecting data points of success.
Precisely. And intertwined with this is the radical acceptance of mistakes. We must reframe mistakes not as failures, but as the very mechanism of learning. Every time you make a mistake and the world doesn't end, you drain a little bit of power from that fear. You learn that communication is resilient. It can survive a wrong preposition or a mispronounced vowel.
So we actively have to seek evidence that mistakes are not catastrophic. This is how we desensitize ourselves to the fear.
Yes, and another powerful builder is what I call curating your environment. Seek out low-stakes, supportive spaces to practice first. This could be a conversation club with other learners, a patient language partner, or even the friendly regular at a coffee shop you frequent. These early positive experiences are like training wheels for your confidence.
And let's not forget the physical side of confidence. Our body language directly influences our mind. Standing up straight, making eye contact, and smiling, even when you're nervous, sends a powerful signal to your own brain that you are capable and in control.
That's a crucial point. Physiology shapes psychology, so to build confidence, you must act as if you are already confident. The feeling will follow the action. It's about faking it until you become it. Every small conversation where you project confidence, however fragile, is another layer of foundation poured for your speaking ability.
And so we reach the end of our discussion today, but this is truly just the beginning of your journey. Carol, as we wrap up, what is the one final piece of encouragement you would leave with our listeners who are ready to step out of the shadows of silence and into the light of conversation?
The most important piece is this: you are not alone in this feeling. Every single fluent speaker you hear, every person you admire for their command of English, has stood exactly where you are standing right now. They have felt the fear, they have made the mistakes, and they have chosen to continue speaking despite them. Your journey is uniquely yours, but the path is well trodden and proven. You can do this.
That's a powerful reminder. This isn't a mysterious talent bestowed upon a select few. It is a skill built through consistent, courageous practice. Let's do a quick recap of the core concepts we've explored together. We started by understanding the listening-speaking gap, acknowledging that it stems from a lack of practice, the fear of mistakes, and the exhausting habit of mental translation.
We then discussed practical strategies to break the silence, from self-narration and mirror practice to using technology as a patient tutor. We emphasized starting small, setting achievable goals, and most importantly, embracing every error as a stepping stone, not a stumbling block.
We dove into the advanced technique of mimicking masters, learning to absorb the rhythm and music of native speech through the P.I.E.S method: precision, imitation, exaggeration, and stabilization. This helps rewire your brain and mouth for natural fluency.
We tackled the crucial shift from being a passive consumer of English to an active creator, urging you to talk back to your content, use speech to text, and engage in communities where English is the tool for pursuing your passions.
We equipped you with conversational tools, reliable icebreakers, and the art of active listening to keep a dialogue flowing naturally and build genuine connections.
And throughout it all, we return to the bedrock of it all: confidence. Building it brick by brick with small victories, reframing mistakes, and carrying yourself with the posture of a speaker even before you fully feel like one.
So, folks, the microphone is now in your hands. The theory is complete. The rest is up to you. Take one single piece of advice from today and act on it right now, today. Speak one sentence to your mirror. Record one voice memo. Compliment one stranger. That first step is the most important one you will ever take.
We believe in you. Remember, fluency is not a destination you arrive at. It is a path you walk every day with curiosity and courage. Thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. Keep practicing, keep speaking, and never ever give up on your voice.
This is Bob signing off with a heart full of hope for your success.
And this is Carol, reminding you that your English voice is already within you, waiting to be heard. Until next time, keep practicing and stay confident.